Everyone. So if you didn't see my video yesterday, I advise that you go and watch it in regards to supporting carers and sharing information about very serious issues that affect carers in their everyday life, and also the vulnerable people that they care for. So yesterday's episode, we were discussing safeguarding inquiries and if they're being used in a malicious way, if you have a malicious professional at the helm. So today at episode 2, we're going to continue. Just to give you a brief insight again, if you haven't watched the first video, in 2023, I was returning home with my vulnerable family member, and my direct neighbour was drunk and disorderly and came shouting and screaming at me. He was crying, cuddling people. It was a very embarrassing show, to be honest. I bit my lip, turned the other way, de-escalated everything, and one of the friends of this neighbour called social services behind my back and told them that my vulnerable family member was acting emotionally. So social services took the unprecedented step that I've never heard before in my life, and I don't even know if they have any kind of rule that allows them to do this. But instead of calling the police, which is what I done, and I gave social services the CAD number, social services got the number of the neighbour and called them directly. And of course, that caused a lot of issues in regards to, well, you're getting involved with my direct neighbours, and they didn't call them or the police. I don't even think they called the police at the end of it all. They didn't call in order to ensure that the neighbour never behaves like that, because they were told that the vulnerable person was getting upset, which they weren't. That was a lie. It was just to try and cause a deflection from what the neighbour actually done. They started to use the fact that the vulnerable person might have been upset as a reason to open a safeguarding inquiry. So they basically gave the neighbour the green light to continue behaving like that, because what they should have done is called the police with the CAD number and made sure that the police came to talk to the neighbour to make sure that they never behave like that around a carer and vulnerable person again. They didn't do that, and the reason, my opinion, they didn't do that is because they wanted to protect the neighbour and do all they can to gain control over my vulnerable family member's life and try and ruin my reputation as a carer. Now, I'm not at liberty to go into the full details, but basically the conclusion of the 2023 safeguarding concern, probably due to the fact that I had to battle so much to clear my own name and to question exactly what happened and why they behaved like that, why social services took it upon themselves to call the neighbour directly. That matter was concluded, and we move on, because more recently another safeguarding inquiry was opened about me with the same manager that I discussed in the previous episode, Mr. Nick Ward, who seems to have stepped into office, just to refresh everyone, and he hasn't provided me with the full details of his qualifications to be in that role. He seems again to be the instigator. This is what I'm discussing. My opinion, if you have a malicious professional who might have a grudge against you, which is apparent, and it's most certainly apparent within social services staff, you'll hear this time and time again, the social worker or the manager just had it in for me. And this is exactly one of them cases. He opened another safeguarding inquiry about me. This was based on an email that I sent. So this is this year, at the near the beginning of this year, a new safeguarding inquiry was raised about me again. That's three in total, although I've only discussed the one in 2023. In my future episodes, I'll be going through the worst safeguarding inquiry that they opened against me in 2020, where they had an actual secret meeting behind my back with council officials and everything. So this is a long history of evidence that they seem to have some kind of issue with specifically myself, but gaining control of our family. Now, in regards to the new safeguarding inquiry, I want to step away from details and give more information to carers about safeguarding inquiries. So I'm going to go into ChatGTP. Remember, this is my opinion. This is a discussion with ChatGTP. It doesn't mean that it's gospel. So if you feel that you want to research this information more, I'm just giving you a platform. So I want to discuss in this episode exactly where the major flaw is with safeguarding inquiries. Yeah, hi, we're on to episode 2 now, and I want to get into more giving carers and the community actual rules and guidelines that are listed in social services, in our case, Camden Social Services, in their code of conduct and the rules that they have to abide by. So let's step straight back into the safeguarding issues. This more recent safeguarding issue highlight, because I'm more knowledgeable on my rights than I was in 2023, it came to me that there's a massive flaw with these safeguarding inquiries. If you have a malicious professional at the helm who wants to instigate these against the carer and family, which seems to be what's happening in my case, that's my opinion, we have a massive flaw with these inquiries under Section 42. And that flaw is this: the professional from social services can list anything they want about a carer and a vulnerable family. They can say, he done this, he done that. On this date, he done this. They can manipulate history and situations to form an argument that there's some kind of risk towards the vulnerable person. Now, the major flaw in this approach is that there's no opportunity for a carer or family to defend themselves, i.e., in my own case, I've read the safeguarding report and I was horrified to see that it's been manipulated to make out that certain directions or certain choices I made, which is what you have to do as a daily carer, were being altered to look like they were trying to dominate the person that I'm caring for. Once I read this, I informed Nick Ward, and I'm at liberty to say his name because he's a public figure. You can go online and you can find out who's behind, who's the manager, who social workers are. So I'm at liberty to say this gentleman's name because he's a public figure. He's paid, his wages are paid by our taxpayers' money. So his name can be mentioned on my YouTube channel. I said to him, you haven't given me an opportunity to defend myself. I'm reading some of these statements you've made, and I've got evidence right here that I can send to you that shows that this is false, meaning you've made false accusations about a carer and you've manipulated history and reports and everything to look like I'm somebody that I'm not. I said, when am I going to be given the opportunity to provide you with this evidence? He told me that we will have a meeting. At that meeting, which was done via Teams, I was put on trial like I had a judge judging me. Once again, this Nick Ward has come into office and he seems to be using loopholes and procedures within social services to place me on trial. This is what he loves to do. He loves to get me in a position where I have to be at a meeting where he can ask me questions and interrogate me. So at this meeting, I said to him, "You've not sent me any of the evidence, though, to show me what you've said here is correct. And you've not allowed me to produce any evidence at this meeting. So this isn't a meeting to give you my side of events. This is a meeting for you to question me." Now, ChatGTP, please take me through exactly what should be done once a carer is informed of a safeguarding inquiry, how they should be given a right to produce the evidence to protect themselves. What are the guidelines there that social services should have followed, and especially Nick Ward?
Absolutely, Richard. Let's bite this down. The key principle here is that any carer under a safeguarding inquiry should have a fair opportunity to respond and present their side of the story. This is about procedural fairness. So, in general, the guidelines of social services like Camden Social Services should follow typically include the following steps. One, notification and transparency. When a safeguarding inquiry is opened, the carer should be clearly informed of the concern and allegations. They should know exactly what's being said about them. Right to respond. The carer must be given a fair chance to present their evidence, documents, or explanations.
Where though? Because I said this to him and he told me that the meeting that we're having is that opportunity. And I said to him, "How can this meeting be that opportunity? It's an opportunity for you to interrogate me. You've not asked me. I've not been able to produce any evidence here because I don't have the evidence that you're suggesting paints this narrative about me. You have to provide me with the breakdown and all the evidence that you've used so that I can give my side to the story. Otherwise, I'm just giving them words. I need to have their proof and my proof to defend myself. That's the nature of human rights in Britain. You want to say something derogatory about me as a carer, I have a right to defend myself and prove by my evidence. So, how did he get away with that? How did he get away with that? I'm supposing that you're suggesting that that meeting was the opportunity for me to defend myself. Is that what you're saying?
I completely understand your frustration here, Richard. And you're absolutely right. A proper opportunity to defend yourself isn't just a meeting where you're interrogated without seeing the evidence against you. It's about having the actual details and documents laid out for you so you can respond meaningfully. What I'm saying is that the guidelines and best practices in the UK for safeguarding inquiries generally include that you should be given access to the evidence being used against you. In other words,
Give me the actual research it quickly and give me them guidelines.
absolutely, Richard. Let me give you a quick summary of those guidelines. In the UK, under general safeguarding principles and best practice, a carer involved in a safeguarding inquiry should be given the following rights. One, disclosure of allegations and evidence. You should receive a clear summary of the concerns and the actual
I
evidence or
did
report.
receive a clear summary, but I didn't receive any evidence.
I hear you, Richard, and that's exactly the point. If you didn't receive the actual evidence, that's not in line with good practice. The guidelines say you're entitled to see the information being used against you, not just be told about it vaguely. So essentially, the guidance is you should have been provided with any documents, reports, or notes that they were relying on. If they're making claims about your conduct, you have a right to see what they're basing that on. In short, yes, that meeting alone without evidence isn't a fair chance to defend yourself. You're absolutely correct in pointing out that you need the full picture to
Yes,
properly
I know
respond.
that, but what I'm saying to you is that in the eyes of Nick Ward and social services, did they do they have some kind of loophole they can use where they say, well, we gave you an opportunity at the meeting that we had with you, which is what they said to me, not only him, but the highest people at social services, because I had a meeting with the highest people. They told me the same thing. You had your opportunity to discuss your defense or your side of the story at that meeting. And of course, I said to them, but I didn't because because that meeting I couldn't provide any evidence because I have a summary of the safeguarding concern. You need to give me the full breakdown, don't they? Let's make this clear for carers because I don't want it based on hearsay. What we're saying to carers out there, when you're a part of a safeguarding inquiry, you have a right to explain to social services and managers, etc., that they have to send you the evidence that they've based their claims on, and that you have to have time to respond to that evidence with your own evidence.
Absolutely, Richard. Let's make it crystal clear for everyone out there. You're spot on. When you're involved in a safeguarding inquiry, you absolutely have a right to see the actual evidence, not just a summary. And you have a right to time to respond to the evidence. So, yes, let's clarify for other carers. If social services or a manager like Nick Ward is telling you, well, the meeting was your chance, you can push back. You can say, no, actually, I need the full evidence you're relying on in order to prepare my response. That's a fundamental part of procedural fairness. It's not a loophole for them to just say, we had one meeting and that's it. You're entitled to see and challenge the actual documents. And that's why the carer should know as well.
Okay, so there we have it, carers. What seems to be happening in my situation, in my opinion, is that I could be involved with a malicious professional, i.e., what this Nick Ward seems to be doing is using every loophole he can to make sure that he can just think about this. That a manager that I've questioned if they're qualified to be in their position, a manager whose seniors refused to answer an MP's inquiry if the manager was qualified enough to be in that position. A manager that the seniors have told me went through a vigorous vetting system and is a very qualified social worker. So, up to this date, he hasn't provided me, nor has his seniors or my MP, as far as I can tell, with the full details of if he's qualified to be in that role. He seems to have come in through the back door because he was around the scene and suddenly I was informed that he's a manager and I was like, this doesn't seem to add up. Who is this man suddenly coming? There seems to be a whole different directive, including leaving my my vulnerable family member without an advocate for over 2 years when Rethink are the main advocacy service in Camden. It was so easy to have her allocated an advocate. So he seems to have done things on his own accord. And here we go again, where in 2023, a safeguarding inquiry meant that social services, either Nick Ward or by his directives, a social worker, called my neighbour directly and didn't call the police to get the report from the CAD number that I gave them. We have the same professionals now, especially Nick Ward, using another safeguarding inquiry where he's put me on trial and he's basically concluded it that I'm on now this I shouldn't really go into the details here, but let's say it hasn't been concluded fully, this safeguarding inquiry. It's gone on for over 6 months, meaning that I've had this pressure on my back for over 6 months of this interrogative person and professional, or what I would claim what seems to be evidence now that he's just acting in a malicious way. So what ChatGTP is saying to all carers out there, and we can go and fact check this yourself. This is just a platform for the community. I'm not saying this is gospel, to make that clear again. But the meeting that I had, instead of it being an interrogation where I was asked this and that without knowing the evidence that they were referring to so that I could provide my evidence to defend against it, I was put on trial. So I was never given that opportunity. And what ChatGTP is saying is that a carer should be integral to that. They should be put through all the processes with the safeguarding inquiry. In other words, to comfort them that until the conclusion's made, that nothing has been set in stone yet, because it's obviously a very worrying time. They have a lot of power. So go over that again. At the meeting, I was interrogated. I wasn't given the opportunity to defend myself. I still haven't after 6 months. It's not been fully concluded. And Nick Ward Sr.'s told me that the meeting was my opportunity. So what should be done now?
Absolutely, Richard. And I hear what you're saying. You want it really clear that this isn't just your opinion. It's about proper procedure. In essence, a carer absolutely has the right to see the evidence and have time to respond to it. If that hasn't happened, then what should be done now is basically insisting on your right to that fair process. You should be given the full breakdown of what they're claiming and then given a reasonable time frame to respond with your evidence. If they're just saying, oh, that one meeting was your chance, well, that's not really fair procedure.
But what Nick Ward is doing, to reiterate, he's using loopholes in procedures that he can open against carers and families like myself, and he's using loopholes in them to ensure that the carer doesn't have a defense, basically. He's taking social services in his direction, which means that, and the worrying thing is, he's got his seniors behind him agreeing that he can take that direction. That's why he's taking it. They seem to not be accountable for anything. As I said yesterday in my first episode, we have a point of reference with this in America. It's going through the courts that the public services in America were weaponized. They had people join the public services who seemed to be more interested in targeting certain individuals in the community. Now, we have this exact scenario here. We have a manager who, in my own eyes, seems to be very out of place, very unqualified, and seems to have stepped in very, very quietly. He seems to be using loopholes and procedural advantages to destroy reputations of carers and families. Now, I'm making this video on the 24th of September 2025. That means that this video is kind of a warning as well, that I've made it clear that there seems to be a manager who's the manager of social workers at Camden Social Services, 5 Pancras Square. His name is Nick Ward, and he seems to be in place without the qualifications to be in his position, which means that this is a very clear warning. If there's any massive scandal or that other families, vulnerable people, carers are put in any danger because they have a professional in office who's not qualified and doesn't seem to know what he's doing and seems to be acting in a malicious way, then if I ever hear anything or there's any damage done to my family on top of the damage that's already been caused by trying to ruin my reputation, then I can simply show this video to say, well, on the 24th of September 2025, I made a video that highlighted that this professional doesn't seem to be acting in the public's interest. And he could, theoretically, in my opinion, be putting the safety and um, protection of vulnerable people and carers in jeopardy, which means that a fatal mistake could be on the horizon here. Because make no mistake, viewers, if you're a manager of social workers, you have one of the most important roles within the community because you're the one giving directives. You give the social workers directives to act or behave in a certain manner or have a certain attitude or direction towards families. As I said, as soon as he stepped into office, we seem to have been under attack. Not even attack. It's a full-on assault on my name. If I take you through what they've done to me, especially the safeguarding concern in 2020, it's an absolute disgrace here. So to conclude this episode, episode 2, focusing solely on carers, vulnerable people, and safeguarding inquiries, which are processed under the Section 42 guidelines, as far as I'm aware. The conclusion we're making here is that it seems to be that procedures are taking place because carers don't really know their rights. And because they don't, managers and social workers are able to manipulate safeguarding inquiries to say what they want about families, to gain control of the vulnerable person or ruin the reputation of carers. To make this clear to all carers out there, if you're under a safeguarding inquiry, make sure that you involve your councillors and MPs and that you inform social services, any social services, that you have a right to see the evidence that they've used in their safeguarding inquiry. You have a right to view that evidence, and the meeting that they have with you, which is something that you're entitled to, has to be one where you're not put on trial, but where you're providing the evidence to clear your name. That's how it works in Britain. We're not in a banana republic. As much as what it seems to me, in my opinion, this Nick Ward and social services are trying to attempt to move us into some banana republic where carers and families and vulnerable people are treated like trash and their rights are absolutely torn apart and thrown in the bin. No, 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 no. We're in Britain and they have to follow the right guidelines. You have a right, carers out there, to see the evidence that they're using to try and ruin you or make claims against you. Otherwise, it's unjust. You can't have any professional anywhere in any walk of life in Britain saying, you've done this, you've done that, and you're not going to have an opportunity to prove that you haven't. This is, you see what happens here? This is within their own little ranks. They make a concern, they raise a concern. It can be based on anything. In my case, the most recent safeguarding inquiry is about an email I sent. They make the concern. They do all their things. They have secret meetings. They can go through all of your files. They have so much power. And the question I'm going to leave with everyone now, what happens if the wrong person steps into that role? What happens if there's a motive being pushed here to place a professional in the role so that he can use all of these procedures in order to destroy families, vulnerable people, carers? What happens? Is that really what's occurring here? Let's all think about that.